Okay,
Jane?
I'm gonna hang up because now I have the audio. Let me hang up.
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Okay, so Jane, we made you a panelist and Colleen an organizer, so she sees exactly what the chair sees. And so she can help them, with running the meeting. And then we in the background at production will also assist with hands raising and all of that.
Okay, so you don't need me to be an organizer?
We did not make you one.
I'm just thinking in terms of keeping track, like looking at the attendees or anything.
Maybe my misunderstanding, I thought you had said you could be a panelist. I'm not sure I can promote you any higher now that I've made you. You would have to get out and come back in again to make you an organizer.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure that, because if Colleen's an organizer, is she going to have be able to like look at the attendees and help
Yes.
Gary?
Yeah, and we will as well in the background.
Okay.
I just made you an organizer.
Oh, good.
I think fine.
Thank you, Arthur.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure I could do. Okay, so can you explain who else might need to be made a panelist other than Steve Chung and JJ Gamelin? And you and
Yeah, I think that's, yeah, I think that's all. I just only concerned that the main like working group members, just to make sure that they can get called on so that they can speak. Because there are several, certainly in the conversation about the grants, there are going to be quite a few people who are going to want to talk.
So they do that by raising their hands, right?
Yes.
Yes, Colleen.
Okay.
So
and
as
then,
they raise their hands, then you and the chair will, kind of call on people to speak or recognize their hands raised, and then Arthur I'm not sure who's in the background with Arthur. I think it's Kendall. Will unmute them and then mute them again when they're done. So
sounds good. Hi, Gary Vanelli.
Hi, Colleen. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Hanging in there.
Good. Good. I'm glad to hear it.
And Colleen, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so Tessa is going to do the description of the rules, the sort of the quote legal, hands raised and unmuting, all that stuff. So we in the dry run, we decided that she would do that.
Okay.
And we've been talking to JJ and Steve, so they're ready to chime in on the grants opportunities item.
Okay.
So
go ahead, Tessa. Go ahead.
Jane,
Good morning, you have JJ Gamma, MCI West here, using the phone audio. Over.
Welcome, JJ.
I tried to be high speed and use the computer function, but that did not work out well.
Oh, shoot.
No problem. This is Tessa, the clerk. I just want to let all of you know that like you, JJ and Steve have both been made panelists, so you will need to self-mute. And then when you want to speak, you can unmute yourself. We just need to control any background noise like that.
Will do.
That my dog.
Hey, Colleen, I don't remember, maybe I forgot. I've got the list of attendees up here, but I can't see any, the hand raise icon. I don't see that. So you're gonna have to help me with the hand raise, people.
I will help you with that. I don't think we have any hands raised at the moment. And
are you clicked on the attendee side of your attendee list?
I am. Oh, so you go on the staff side?
Yeah. You want to be on the attendees side.
I got it. I see it.
See where the hand is, but nothing's checked right now. So then
I got you. I'm there.
Pop up.
Thanks, Tessa. That helped.
You're welcome.
So Tessa, so that means that John Gamelin can't see the PowerPoints, right?
I'm actually, I can see the Sandag agenda. So I'm on the computer, and I can see the slides, but I can't see the audio associated with the computer.
Okay.
Hey, good morning, shipmate. Steve Chung here. I can see both, and I am on audio and visual. Over.
Good morning, Steve. Welcome to Monday.
It's a beautiful Monday, Gary.
Morning, Steve.
Good morning.
So, Mr. Chairman, would you like people when they're speaking to turn their cameras on? Would you like that to be?
They don't have to. Some people don't want to do it. I mean, as long as they clearly identify themselves, I think we'll be okay. If they want to
Okay.
turn on the camera, that's great. If they don't, that's okay, as long as we know who's speaking.
Okay, very good.
We'll get started in about 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah, it looks like we're about 2 minutes out from 9 o'clock. Just let me know when you want me to start the broadcast.
Okay.
Jane, can you help me identify your members for a quorum, please?
Yep, that's what I'm doing right now.
I've only been able to identify 4 people.
I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 5. MTS, County of San Diego. Mr. Whipple is County of San Diego. Richard Whipple. Steve,
Okay, that's who I was missing.
yeah. MCI West, Marine Corps.
Carl Hohenfeld.
We actually can't count Gary as
Carl-
Port of San Diego.
I see Carl Hohenfeld.
That's,
Rick?
yeah, MCRC,
What's his actual name, Jane?
MCRD. Rick Huenfeld.
Okay, because it came up Carl, so I just want to make sure I don't.
I know, it's confusing.
He's a Marine.
And he has 2 names. Is that what happens when you're a Marine?
Yeah, and they're not really short for either.
Okay, guys, it's about 9 o'clock, so I'd like the staff to start recording the meeting. Thank you. This is Gary Benelli, the chairman of Sandag's Military Working Group. And this is the meeting on the morning of June the 8th for the Regional Military Working Group. Because we're doing this pretty much in cyberspace, we're going to go through a couple of things first. I'm going to ask staff two things. First of all, they've got to confirm that we have a quorum. If we have a quorum, we can vote on things like minutes and take actions. If we don't have a quorum, these will just all be information items, and we'll have to put off any action per se, formal action, until the next military working group when we have a forum. And so when they can, first of all, they'll confirm whether we have a quorum. Second, Tessa, our Sandag clerk, will go through sort of the rules of the road, so we can, so you all can have the ability to weigh in when you want to, and we can make sure we are hearing you and listening to you, and you can get your input into that. So with that, Tessa and Jane Clough, could you confirm whether or not we have a quorum?
This is the clerk. You do not have a quorum at this time.
Okay, so Tessa, then go ahead and if somebody jumps in and we do get to the point where we have a quorum, we can come back to things like minutes and stuff like that. But right now, being we don't have a quorum, this will pretty much be an informational sharing meeting. With that, Tessa, if you'd go through sort of the rules of the road this morning for all of us.
Amy Heim, okay.
Thank you.
Was it?
Yes. Yes, I am. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay.
For your committee working group members, your microphone, those of you who are in attendee mode, is muted by default. Please do not unmute yourself. If you have a question or a comment, or would like to, so if you have a question or a comment, please raise your hand. You'll see the hand icon at the top right of the screen. The chair will be able to see a list of all the working group members who have raised their hands, and will call on you at the appropriate time, and you will be unmuted. Your microphone icon will turn from red to green. Again, do not click your microphone yourself. If you mute yourself, we cannot unmute you. After you've made your comments or your question, you will be muted again, and the chair will proceed to the next working group member with their hands raised. The chair will call on staff to present each item. After each presentation, if you have a question or a comment, raise your hand and you will be called on in the same manner. We will then take public comment, which I will describe in a moment. Working group members can then offer comments on the items by raising their hand. As before, the chair will call on each member who have raised their hands and unmute you individually. Although there is a comment box, a chat box into which you can type, we will not be using that. Please do not use this function. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand and you will be recognized. For voting, which we will, if we do get a quorum, we will vote on the minutes, but for voting, it has to be done in roll call vote. And you will be asked to speak your name when called upon to vote. For members of the public, public comments could be emailed during today's meeting, sent to clerk@sandag.org, and identify the item number for which your comments pertain and the name of the commenter. The clerk will then read the first minute of any comments that were submitted during the meeting into the record, and the full comment will be made part of the complete meeting record. I believe the chair may also take public comment during the meeting. So members of the public in the attendee mode, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand and you will be recognized. Thank you. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Tessa. I realize this is going to be a little bit awkward, so we're going to get through this. I'm going to ask for 2 sets of public comments right now. My first set of public comments would be for something that's not on the agenda, something not listened to. If there's a member of the public who would like to comment to the military working group for something that's not on the military working group agenda, I'll take those questions or comments now. So Tessa or Colleen or Jane, I don't see any hands raised right now. And so do we have any general public comment?
I do not have any non-agenda public comment at this time.
Okay, so then moving on to the meeting, the minutes of the last meeting, we can't vote on those, but I'll also take public comment is there any comment on the minute meetings? I don't see any, so I'm waiting for staff.
I do not have any public comments on this item.
Okay, so then, okay, no public comments. So are there any comments about the minutes from members of the working group? And seeing none there, I'm going to assume there's no public comment, so we can move on to, I'm on item number 4 already, the chair's report. Is everybody with me? Okay, item number 4, a couple of things. It's, being we are the military working group, it's always good to know the chain of command, and things have changed in our Navy quite a bit, especially things that impact our installations around the San Diego region. We have a new Secretary of the Navy, Kenneth J. Breakworth. He goes by KJ Breakworth. He and I were flag buddies, selected as flags at the same time, so I know him reasonably well. So KJ Breakworth is the new Secretary of the Navy, and I'm sure he'll be out to San Diego, a fleet concentration area, relatively fast, as soon as he gets his feet on the ground. But as of last week, he is now the new Secretary of the Navy, not in an acting capacity. He is the man. Also, very important to us, on his staff as Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Energy Installations and Environment had been Mr. Lucian Niemeyer. He has been relieved as of last month by retired Rear Admiral Chuck Williams, who is now the new Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Energy Installations and Environment. Also in the chain of command on the active duty Navy side in uniform, an old friend of ours, Admiral Yancey Lindsay, was promoted to 3-star Vice Admiral, and as of last week, he relieved Mary Jackson, and Yancey is now the new Commander of Navy Installations Command, essentially the head landlord for the entire Navy across the globe. Yancey's a former Naval Base Coronado commander, and he also served as Navy Region Southwest. So he's quite familiar with our region. I think he'll be naturally a very good person to understand the complexities and layers of governments and all the challenges we have within the San Diego region. Let's see. Lastly, to update the committee members and the working group members, Congressman Jack Reed, in response to a request from him, he is the ranking member of the Armed Services Committee. Congressman Reed is currently reviewing military installations coordination surrounding communities in an effort to increase outside defense infrastructure resilience. So he's looking at what can communities that surround military installations do to help out one another back and forth. It's a nationwide study. The group that he commissioned, Jack Reed commission, has been in San Diego, met with installation commanders as well as SANDAG and maybe some of our local government communities. Their review also encompasses the degree which installations rely on surrounding communities to support installation functions. I'm told there should be a draft report about that effort by this summer. So this summer starts in June. It could go as late as the end of September, but we look forward to receiving that report and seeing what's in it and how we can advantage our region to work between the communities and military installations. I'm going to turn this over a little bit to Colleen. Colleen, if you could talk a little bit about the regional plan, and because of the pandemic, the timeline to getting the regional plan has been extended somewhat. So if you could chime in where we're at there, I appreciate that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, military working group members. Thank you for joining us this morning. With respect to the regional plan, we're still on schedule to release the draft plan in April 2021, and for the board to consider the plan in the fall of 2021. The piece that we have postponed is the presentation on the overall vision. And we were set to do that in early March, and that's when everything hit. So we now have tentative dates with our policy advisory committees and the board of directors. So August 7th with our Transportation and Regional Planning Committee. We plan to present the vision for the regional plan and then present that to the Board of Directors the following week on August 14th. In July, we will be doing a joint meeting with our Regional Planning and Transportation Committee, and this is scheduled for July 17th. What we're going to share there is what we've learned through the COVID-19 experience and how that can be applied to the vision. So there's lots of questions coming up about to what extent will we be considering telecommuting? Will that people who never thought they could telecommute have been telecommuting, I being one of them. Also, what might this mean in long term for perhaps office space? And then there's just the bigger issue too of kind of the digital divide. There are certain jobs that are able to telecommute and jobs that just can't in the service industry and others. So we're going to be putting together a panel presentation to sort of set the stage for what we've learned, what we're thinking going forward, and then the vision will be presented August 7th and August 14th. So that's the update. We certainly invite all of you to listen in on those meetings and more information to come on that. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Colleen. Any questions of Colleen regarding the regional plan or the timing of the regional plan? Raise your hand if you have a question. Raise your digital hand. Okay, seeing none. While I'm here, while I'm thinking about it, so I don't lose my trend of thought here, what I'd like staff to do too, as Ray Major and his team, they've been putting out a lot of good economic data and statistics, and they're doing it by sub-regions and stuff. So it definitely has an impact on military installations and the communities surrounding them. I'd ask the staff to make sure the folks that are on our military working group list receive electronically that information that Ray and his team have been putting out, because I think it's very germane and very timely. Okay, I'm moving on to now item number 5. Okay, any questions from the public, excuse me, regarding Colleen and the regional plan? Any member of the public want to comment on that? Got to give the public a chance. I see it. Nicole Burgess, you have your hand raised, so I'd like to recognize Nicole Burgess.
Chair Bonelli, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, thank you, Colleen. And I just wanted to say good morning and thank you all for being here in these challenging times. And, you know, just addressing that presentation on July 17th, you know, I can send Colleen an email, but it's almost easier for me just to comment it now and just make sure that active transportation is huge. People are on their bikes. So let's not forget that important component in this new and how we adapt our vision. And so I know the military working group has heard from me, and I appreciate the opportunity to be part of this military working group and having my voice heard. And I just want to also, just as a non-agenda just item, is there any way to see who is actually present at this meeting? Because honestly, it's nice to see who I'm talking to. Is there a list of presenters that can be available or not? If not, I'll just leave it there. But thank you again for the opportunity. I appreciate it, and I look forward to the agenda items. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Nicole.
Tessa, are you able to respond to that? If people are signed up as attendees, are they able to see who's participating in the meeting?
Hi, this is Tessa. No, but you can refer to the agenda that's posted to see the list of speakers and presenters. But the military working group will receive a list of attendees after the meeting, and they can share that if requested.
Okay, thank you, Tessa. Okay, I don't see any other hands raised for this item, so I'm going to move on to item number 5.
We do have, sorry, Gary, we do have a quorum now. Tessa, do you think we can go back to the minutes?
Wonderful.
We do have
okay.
a quorum.
So let's go back to the minutes. What I'm looking for here is a motion and a second to approve the minutes of January the 6th, 2020. Do I hear a motion for approval of the minutes?
Move to approve.
Okay, that sounds like Steve Chung made a motion, so he's made a motion. Is there a second? I see Rick Honeyfield with his hand raised. Is he seconding?
Yes, I am seconding.
Okay, so I have a motion from Steve Chung, a second from Rick Honeyfield to approve the minutes of January the 6th, 2020. Is there any further discussion amongst the military working group before I call for the question? Okay, Tessa, if I know we got to take a roll call on this, so I don't know how awkward that's going to be, but let's just try to go through and take a roll call vote on the minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not quite sure who the eighth person is for the quorum, but I will call each jurisdiction. And if they're present, then they will be unmuted. City of Coronado, either Blair King or Cliff Maurer, I believe they are absent. City of Imperial Beach, Andy Hall or Steve Dush, I believe they are absent. City of National City, Brad Ralston, I believe is absent. City of Oceanside, Jeff Hunt or Russ Cunningham, believe absent. City of San Diego, Tate Galloway. And your vote, Mr. Galloway?
Yes.
Thank you. Coast Guard San Diego Sector, Commander Tim Williams or Lieutenant Commander Kevin Winters. I believe they are absent. County of San Diego, Rich Whipple. Mr. Whipple? Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Thank you. Marine Corps Installation West, John Gamelin.
Present and yes.
Thank you. Marine Corps Recruit Depot, Rick Hunefeld. Sorry. There you go, Rick.
Yes.
Thank you. MTS, Rodrigo Carrasco. Mr. Carrasco. And can you record your vote? Mr. Carrasco? You are unmuted. Perhaps you could put something in the chat. Your audio is not working. We cannot hear you. If you could just put something in the chat box for your vote. We'll move on to Navy Southwest Division, either Captain Turner or Joe Stuyvesant. Who is absent. Navy Southwest Division, Steve Chung.
Steve Chung here. Aye.
Thank you. And Mr. Carrasco has indicated yes on the minutes. I will record his vote. North County Transit District, Charles Maine. Absent. And Port of San Diego, Commissioner Benelli, Chair Benelli.
I don't think I can vote, Tessa. I think it's Amy Heim that's got to vote if she's here.
Oh, Amy is here. Go ahead, Amy.
I'm present and I vote approve. Yes.
Thank you. That item passes.
Okay, thanks, Tessa. Before we move on to item 5, I forgot something very important in the military here, the chain of command here. The staff support for our military working group is changing. Dr. Jane Clough, who's done a very good professional, diligent job over the last couple of years helping us supporting the military working group, is moving on to, I assume, working with the 17 tribal councils and our Native American population here in the San Diego region. But she's going to be ably backed up by April Pinanek, who's been working with us and has worked some of the studies with us. So April, we look forward to working with you more closely. Jane, thank you for the spectacular job over the years and working through an important part of our San Diego region, the military installations in the surrounding community. So thank you, ladies, and look forward to keeping in contact with both of you.
Thank you, Gary.
Okay.
It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome. Moving on to item number 5, the comprehensive multimodal corridor plan. Before I call on Richard Chavez, what I'm going to do, just so the working group knows, I'm going to let Richard present, and then I'm going to go to public comment first before I go to working group member comments or questions. So Richard, if you're available, tell us about the multimodal corridor plan. Okay, I see slides up, but I'm not hearing anything.
Apologies, Mr. Chavez, you can now unmute.
There we go. Thanks, Chair.
Hi, Richard.
Nice to see you, Gary. Thanks for having me this morning. Colleen, did you want to start things off, or do you want me to take it away?
I'm happy to start. So we presented this last Friday to the Sandag Transportation Committee. And Richard, maybe you want to just click through the first few slides and then then you and I can split this up. So the first thing is, as if we needed another acronym or term to add to transportation planning, the Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Plans, shorthand are CMCPs. And Richard, if you want to go to the next slide, okay. So there are a couple of board actions that put this work into place. So last summer, the Sandag Board of Directors gave the planning team and the agency direction to continue working on the regional plan, utilizing the 5 big moves, and to prioritize work in corridors, transportation corridors that have been in the works for some time, such as State Route 78, 52, 67, and 94, 125. And then in September, we did a very large budget amendment. We, as an agency and the board of directors, allocated about $600 million to a number of planning and other infrastructure projects. And they allocated $40 million for these CMCPs. And there are roughly 12 in the region. If you think of all the major highway corridors, those are what we're referring to. The next slide, Richard, if you can go to that one. As we're describing these, what they are is they're not just highway corridors, they're multimodal. So in every one of these corridors, we're looking at what are the HOV lanes, goods movement, bikes, peds, transit, all multimodal. And this is getting us ready and aligning with state goals and state funding. Really what it does is it takes a deeper dive into what is already in the regional plan. And then the California Transportation Commission, who oversees a lot of the state funding and allocates state funding for transportation projects, has actually laid out guidelines in how these plans are prepared. And the biggest pot of money available to us really is Senate Bill 1 funding. And so the California Transportation Commission has said, if you want to get this state funding, you better be doing these plans. Okay. And just to think about this, the next slide shows an example, really what we've been referring to as the first generation of CMCPs, and that's the North Coast Corridor. So in this effort, which many of you have been hearing about for several years now, this really shows what we're talking about with a multimodal corridor. So it's HOV lanes on I-5. It's double tracking the low sand corridor, the rail corridor. So that's the highway and then the rail. There are bike and ped improvements on the local streets and roads. And there's a transportation demand management program that goes along with all of this, as well as the environmental improvements to the lagoons. And so this is really what we're talking about when we think about bringing multiple modes together. The next slide shows an illustration which takes us a step further, and this brings in the 5 big moves. So when we're talking about complete corridors, it's that much more the relationship between the local streets and roads that you see in this graphic. You see the bike and ped, then the high-speed transit. There's also transit on the highway system, managing the system through technology. You see goods movement. And so this is what we're talking about with a fully integrated planning effort in each of our major 12 corridors in the region. The next slide, and I'll turn this over to Richard. There are 12 corridors, and the board of directors phase them in phase 1 and phase 2. So these are the 5 that are now getting underway. And I'll turn it over to Richard to talk about each of these, where we are in the process, and then we can also talk about how we plan to engage the military working group and others in these planning efforts. So I'll turn it over to you, Richard.
Thanks, Colleen. Next slide, please. So progress to date, we've had workshops with Caltrans, District 11, so our partners over at Wand Street, and we've formed teams and got our work plans together for each of the corridors. We're working on the geographical areas for each of the corridor studies. I'll show you that exhibit here in just a second. And we've drafted issue and opportunity statements for each of the corridors, which are in your agenda package as attachment 2. And we'd love to get any comments that you have on those issues and opportunity statements. Please keep in mind that those are works in progress. That's a first cut of what's going to be a year-plus effort here, and those will evolve over time, especially as we start engaging stakeholders and getting out to the public. So those are first draft. Keep that in mind, but we'd love to get your comments today. Next slide, please. So these are the geographical areas for the phase 1 corridor studies, which there are 5. And I want to point out a couple changes that we're recommending from what the board approved back in September of 2019. What's shown as number 1 on the list there, the purple line, what's shown in purple in the exhibit here. The purple line in Interstate 805 corridor and the blue line in I-5 South corridor were identified as 2 separate corridors back in September. In the teams doing their preliminary work, they're saying, hey, there's a lot of overlap in the infrastructure between those 2 corridors. We expect the policy considerations to be very similar for those 2 corridors. So the recommendation is to combine those 2 into 1 corridor study. Number 2 on the list, the Sea to Santee State Route 52, and number 3 on the list, San Vicente State Route 67 corridor. That was identified as 1 corridor back in September 2019. Staff is recommending that those be split into 2. One has, is very rural, State Route 67, one more urban, State Route 52, so different demographics for the 2 corridors. Also, we're expecting, the policy considerations to be quite different for those 2 corridors. So instead of 1 corridor study, 2 separate corridor studies. What's shown in blue on the exhibit, the North County corridor, State Route 78, and then the Central Mobility Hub and Connections corridor study area shown in yellow. Next slide, please. So if you come through policy guidance developed by California Transportation Commission, Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration on how to do corridor studies, if you take all the policy considerations out of those guidelines, you can kind of boil it into these 12 categories. And this was presented first to Transportation Committee back in February. From that discussion, changes are shown in red. But we're asking each of the corridor teams to prioritize these 12 policy considerations for their corridor. And not so much an effort that any one of these policy considerations is more important than another, because they're all important. But it's to give the team a sense of what the focus areas should be for each of the corridor studies. That will help them define the transportation solutions, the appropriate transportation solutions for those corridors. And again, as we go through stakeholder outreach and working with the community, we expect those to change. But we'll be bringing these back to Transportation Committee, and this is going to be a work in progress again through this year plus effort. Next slide, please. This last slide. So this is our implementation schedule. Where we're at today, spring of 2020, we've formed the teams, we've developed the work plans for the corridor studies. Heading into this summer and fall, we'll be coming back to the Transportation Committee. We can come back to the military working group if you'd like as well, to present the results of the data analysis and the stakeholder engagement. So we'll be doing a lot of review and discussion with the stakeholders based on that data analysis, bringing it back to the Transportation Committee for policy discussion. Heading into this fall and winter of 2021, we'll get out to the community, do that community outreach, and then in the spring and summer of 2021, presenting the draft and final corridor plans, the final CNCPs to the Transportation Committee. And with that, I'll turn it back to Chair Pinelli or Colleen if you had any final remarks you'd like.
Thank you, Richard. Colleen, do you have anything?
Nothing further to add. Thank you.
Okay, I'm looking now for, first of all, from non-working group members, from members of the public. Do any members of the public have any questions or comments before I go to the working group members? Look, you have to raise your hand. So Council Member Marvin Hines from Coronado, I see his hand raised. So let's go to Council Member Marvin Hines.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Now, I just wanted to get clarity. Attachment 2 on the package that I received is a Department of Defense funding opportunity. Mr. Chavez made reference to the draft statements being out in attachment 2. Is there another document that perhaps I did not receive?
Let me see the agenda here. Maybe you didn't get the same report that the Transportation Committee got.
Just if we could, if it's going to be sent out, if it could be sent out. If it wasn't, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, that was not included in your agenda report. We'll have to send that Transportation Committee agenda out to the military working group. Apologize for that.
Thanks for participating, Council Member Hines. I'm looking for hands. I've got, do I see any other hands? Staff, do you see any other hands right now from public members? Okay, I don't.
I do not.
Okay, let's go to the working group members. Anybody from the working group want to comment or ask a question of Mr. Chavez?
Chair Benelli, I'd like to state for the record that there were no emailed public comments for this item.
Thank you, Clerk Tessa. Okay, I don't see any. Okay, let me add my 2 cents here. Again, stepping back, looking at the strategic level, what SANDAG is trying to accomplish, what the policymakers are trying to accomplish, and I guess I can make this comment, I don't get myself in too much trouble. The thing that's good about councils of governments or associations of governments, it brings geographic regions together to try to look regionally at what's best for our constituents throughout the region. So the county of San Diego is about the size of the state of Connecticut. We have 4,200 square miles. Most of the folks live on the western third of the county. What staff and the policymakers are trying to come up with is a network of mobility covering all modes and, of course, all parts of our county. So naturally, from my perspective, as they build this network over the next 18 months, they're looking at how can they build a safe network. It's got to be effective. You got to be able to move people, goods, services. People live, work, and play in different places. It's got to be efficient to meet federal and state guidelines, laws, regulations. It's got to be sustainable. And the real hard part, I think, too, is equitable. I mean, how do you treat people who live in Borrego Springs? How do you treat people who live in Ramona? And trying to get people around. So it's, you know, the population centers, you know, south of, in the central city hub of San Diego, below, south of Interstate 8, are very much into mass transportation as well as biking and walking. The North County is more spread out, so they're looking at local streets and roads and highways. So how do you jive that all together? And that's part of the process that the policymakers and staff will be trying to meet out over the next 18 months. Having said that, Colleen or Richard, do you have anything else to add?
I think you're right on with that, Mr. Chairman. You know, it really is about the overall network, and the network involves all 19 jurisdictions in the region, and it's finding the right transportation solutions in each of these settings. So thank you for your comments, and we look forward to bringing more details to you back as these plans start to come together.
Okay, and does any members have any questions or comments as they go through the materials later on? Please don't hesitate to email or contact Richard Chavez, Colleen Clemens, or April Pianek with your comments or questions so staff can get back to you. With that, I'm going to move on to item and seeing no more public comment, Tessa. I don't see any other public comment. I'm going to go on to item number 6, which is the Central Mobility Hub, the Old Town Complex, what we know now as NAVWAR. I'm going to say this in the beginning and say this in the end so I don't forget. Besides listening to this, because you guys are involved in all this, SDMAC, the San Diego Military Advisory Council, is having a 1-hour webinar on Thursday, this Thursday at 11 a.m. For about an hour on 11 June, Thursday. Admiral Boris Becker and his civilian counterpart, the executive director, Pat Sullivan, will be talking about this revitalization process from their perspective. The guys on the ground right there doing that. So I'll remind us at the end of this to announce that again. With that, I'll turn this over to Sandag staff. I think Colleen and Ryan Kohut are going to present this item.
Yeah, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan. And I think since we last met, Ryan Kohut was officially appointed as our Sandag Special Projects Director, heading up this effort. And so he's going to talk about the various components that are all coming together on this project that really can become a jewel for the San Diego region. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Ryan.
Thanks, Colleen. Back in January, the Navy and Sandag entered into an agreement cementing the partnership between the two entities to work together to recapitalize and redevelop the Old Town Center Navy site to include both a first-class NAVWAR facility along with a regional transportation center to connect the San Diego International Airport to the greater San Diego region. While the COVID-19 pandemic has changed a lot in how we do things, the work of the Navy and Sandag has continued apace. Right now, the Navy is currently in the midst of its environmental analysis of both the Navy, a recapitalized Navy facility, and redevelopment, mixed-use redevelopment on the NAVWAR OTC site. They have gone through significant public outreach and have been soliciting comments from the public. In general, the reception has been very positive. And so we've heard nothing of support as the Navy's kind of taken the lead in getting out there and telling everybody kind of what they're trying to do with the site and the scale of what hopefully will be there in the future. We at Sandag, in addition to supporting the Navy in those efforts, are beginning the process of the transportation planning of how a central mobility hub might fit out there on the site, how that mobility hub would enhance the overall goals encapsulated with within the new regional plan, and how that regional transportation facility would integrate both within the Navy's concept of what a redeveloped OTC site would be, but also with the greater surrounding community. Right now, the other big effort is Sandag is bringing on board a bench of project development consultants. And what these consultants are going to do for us is give us the expertise in access to the expertise that we need to do the appropriate business case analysis and really be able to get out there and figure out how to integrate a project of the scale of the Central Mobility Hub with a substantial redevelopment of the Navor site, with the Navy through a public-private partnership process. And so over the next 30 to 60 days, I think we'll be seeing some of those consultants come on board for us and really start helping us out. So that's very exciting for all of us working on this project. Going forward, we're going to be continuing our support of the Navy's environmental analysis. That will be that's hopefully going to come to a record of decision and start to bear fruit sometime towards the end of this year, early 2021. And then hopefully we'll be, as this transportation planning process moves forward, we'll be looking at the start of an environmental analysis on what a central mobility hub would actually be. And so, and that would get us rolling towards a place where, should the Navy have its environmental document on the development and the Navy facility done, and Sandag complete the environmental document on a transportation center, that we would be in a place that some might say resembles shovel ready, should economic stimulus opportunities develop. Alongside all of this, we're happy to report that a California State Assembly bill, AB 2731, sponsored by Assemblymember Todd Gloria and principally co-authored by California State Senator Tony Atkins, is moving through the California legislature. It has now been through the Natural Resources Committee and just cleared Appropriations Committee last week. This proposed legislation would provide CEQA streamlining opportunities for the Navy's redevelopment and for a central mobility hub. It would allow us to cut down on the possible time to clear any litigation over the environmental impacts of the development at that site. It would not exempt anything from CEQA. It would just merely provide a kind of a more defined process for how that discussion and those disputes could be resolved. In fact, it strengthens the environmental protections associated with this project. So with that, that's where we're at. We're going to be working on the business case analysis, and then hopefully, starting to really cement together a path forward with the Navy to redevelop the site and to bring both a recapitalized Navy facility, Navor facility, to support our national defense, and to integrate a regional transportation center that will increase the mobility of San Diegans for many years to come. So with that, I'll hand it back to Colleen.
Oops. Nothing to add. Nothing to add.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cohort. Before I go to the working group members, I'm looking for any comment or questions from members of the public. Do any members of the public have a question or comment on the presentation? Okay, seeing none right now. Wait, I do. Nicole Burgess.
Nellie, I just wanted to comment, and as this kind of correlates with the previous presentation of the corridors, this is thank you, Ryan, for the presentation. This is all very exciting, and I look forward to this project moving forward. As we think about this as the heart of San Diego, and maybe it's the hub of my bike wheel, and all those sprockets go out to the military bases, and the communities and the residents that are nearby. So really considering the first mile, those miles to those local MCRD, Point Loma, 32nd Street, how we can get those residents from Claremont, PB, Ocean Beach, all those residents active transportation, and really bringing that as a priority for this wonderful project for the region. So thank you very much, and I'll keep it short. Thanks.
Thank you, Nicole. Mandy Havlick, did you have your hand raised, Mandy Havlick?
Mandy, you are
Oh, there we go. There we go. I just wanted to hear more on how, if we bypass NEPA and CEQA requirements for the project, how that actually benefits the environment, how streamlining any legal repercussions or advocation of the environment will actually be better on the environmental review. Thank you.
Hi, yeah, I'd be happy to address that. First of all, the Navy is currently undergoing its environmental analysis of the site under its obligations under the National Environmental Protection Act, NEPA. They are preparing an environmental impact statement. What SANDAG has done is we're partnering with the Navy to participate in that federal environmental analysis. We have contracted with the Navy to supplement their environmental analysis contract with their consultant to what we call a NEPA Plus. We've asked and paid for the Navy to perform additional studies of environmental impacts that are not required under NEPA, but are required under CEQA, so that at the end of the day, when the Navy's done with its federal NEPA environmental document, it will have additional information, not ordinarily required under federal law, but kind of supplemental information that will make their document technically sufficient under CEQA. It's going to be a much stronger document and cover a wider scope of issues than a federal environmental document normally would, so that it would meet the requirements under CEQA. The technical requirements. And so what this bill is doing, it's saying, legislature, as long as we, comply with all of the technical issues that, that CEQA would require us to look at inside of this federal document, that we can adopt it as a state CEQA document as well. And what that does for us is it allows us to save considerable time and money in that we're not doing two different parallel environmental analyses of virtually the same issues. And so, this bill would help us bless that approach, which is allowed under CEQA, but this would clarify that because of the unique nature of what we're doing, federal land that's not subject to CEQA right now, being studied under a federal process, that we're going to be adding these requirements to bring that federal study into compliance with the state law. And yes, we're going to ask for some streamlining efforts in that, but the Navy wouldn't have had to do that if they didn't want to be in this partnership. And so this shows the Navy's interest in working with the state of California to apply a more rigorous environmental standard over this site, and our willingness to fund those efforts and work together and bringing the policy goals of California law onto this site. We've been in outreach with various environmental groups and trying to get that message out. And over time, we're going to have to talk with our friends in the environmental community about what we're doing and the unique environmental issues here, and explain that this regional transportation project really is going to result in the furtherance of California environmental goals like really no other project that's ever been done. So this is the beginning of a communications process. We're going to be continuing to be out there in the community and with those groups and explaining to our legislative partners what we're really trying to do here. So we feel it's pretty exciting, but I can answer any other questions.
Okay, I think I'm looking at hands. I think David Sajak from Naval Base San Diego maybe had his hand raised. Dave, are you around?
I sent him a PIN number. He's connected on his phone, and he needs to dial in that PIN number before he can have audio.
Okay. I'm looking for other hands from anybody else have any comment or question on this item?
And I will state for the record that I do not have emailed comments on item 6.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Coat, thank you. My suggestion here, two things again, as a reminder, if you want to go to sdmac.org, if you're interested in this, Admiral Becker and their executive director, Pat Sullivan, will be doing a 1-hour webinar on Thursday, this Thursday from 11 to noon. So go to San Diego Mac, that's sdmac.org. And you can register for that webinar if you're interested in that. And I suggest that it'll be informative with the good Admiral there and Mr. Sullivan. Let's see, the last thing I suggest maybe is, and this is for naturally Chairman, Sandag Chairman Steve Voss and the Executive Director Hassan Karada, with the new Assistant Secretary Williams and the new Commander Navy Installations Command, the earlier you get to them on this, the better. So the more you can do a face-to-face, or if they're coming out here, make sure you get work in close conjunction with them, the better. Everybody's got a lot on their plate, and I'm a fan of the squeaky wheel. So if you can get in front of them, I think it will benefit, it will help expedite this project as much as possible. With that, I'm going to switch a little bit of gears. Tess, I want to reconfirm that we did have enough of a quorum to approve the minutes of last meeting.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I do want to state for the record that the original vote on the minutes, we lost our quorum during the vote, and so the minutes did not pass. We have a quorum now with Mr. Charles Main with North County Transit District. Mr. Main, if you could please register your vote on the minutes.
Yes, I approve.
Thank you. And with that vote, Chair, the minutes do pass with the members present at the quorum.
Thanks, Tessa. Okay, I'm moving on to item number 7, grant fund opportunities. And I'm going to turn this over to April. Once she makes her presentation, again, I'll go to public comments and then working group member comments. Hi, April. Good to see you.
Hi, Chair. So as a result of the military multimodal access strategy that our military working group put together, we now have a standing agenda item to discuss grant funding opportunities. And today we want to focus on 2 grant funding opportunities that have been released by the Office of Economic Adjustment. One is for compatibility planning with our military installations, and the other is a capital pilot program for infrastructure to support our military installations. And I'd like to call on Steve Chung and John Gamelin to help with this item.
Hey, good morning, April. Steve Chung here. Is there any particular order that you wanted the 2 items, DSIP first or the grants program?
Yeah, let's start with the compatibility planning funding and then the DSIP, and then we can open up for discussion with the rest of the military working group.
Okay, copy that. Let me go ahead and get started on and start with some context here. In late 2019, the Office of Economic Adjustment, a division within the Office of the Secretary of Defense, implemented a new grants program to support military installations and partnering agencies. The new grants program called the Military Installation Resilience Grant Program. The Office of Economic Adjustment started this program with a selection of about 20 military installations across the U.S. We were fortunate as 3 of our Navy installations in the metro area were identified for consideration for this initial round. Some context here also in relation to what OEA is currently considering. The current proposal under consideration by the Office of Economic Adjustment is to enhance the collaborative efforts between the state and local governments with military installations to sustain readiness and support implementation of the National Defense Strategy. And to that end, the initial two kind of large muscle movements or goals of the military installation resilience proposal is to first continue to reinforce a strong resilience component to support work underway on key transportation corridors in the San Diego region, with some focus on the central mobility hub. And second, develop and analyze business processes and protocols for data and information sharing between San Diego and the military. For terminology, and I fielded this question, can't say how many times over the last few months, the definition of what is the military installation resilience. And I will share with you and the military working group here a defining framework that was incorporated into the National Defense Authorization Act, and how the NDAA has military installation resilience defined is as follows. And it's a little wordy, a little run-on sentence, but bear with me here for a moment. The capability of a military installation to avoid, prepare for, minimize the effect of, adapt to, and recover from extreme weather events or from anticipated or unanticipated changes in environmental conditions that do or have the potential to adversely affect the military installation or essential transportation, logistical, or other necessary resources outside the military installations that are necessary in order to maintain, improve, or rapidly reestablish installation mission assurance and mission essential functions. April and Chairman Bonelli, that concludes a quick update on the Military Installation Resilience Grant Program. Over.
Okay, so what I'm looking for here is, staff, what were you thinking about? Were you thinking you'd like to work through this and look at granting grant opportunities with this particular piece of NDAA legislation?
Thank you, Chair. I think that for the purpose of today's meeting, we just wanted to give an update on what Steve was referring to as one of the submittals for this particular OEA grant. And then we anticipate that this will have multiple opportunities for submittal. So once we provide this introduction to both the resilience planning and the Defense Communities Infrastructure Pilot Program, we wanted to open up discussion for the military working group to identify potential funding opportunity projects that we should consider.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Then we can take comments and questions as we go.
So good morning, JJ Gamble here from Marine Corps Installations West. Today I'll provide some highlights of the OEA DoD Defense Communities Infrastructure Pilot Program. On 6 May, OEA and DoD announced an opportunity to obtain funding to assist states and local governments, nonprofit or not-for-profit member-owned utility services in addressing deficiencies in community infrastructure supported of a military installation. SecDef identified priority focus areas to be military family quality of life, military resilience, and military value in that specific order. The program provides $50 million in grants for OEA to obligate prior to the 30th of September of this year. The award ceiling is $25 million and the award floor is $250,000. All proposed projects must result in a complete and usable projects. As far as eligible projects go, they include any complete or usable transportation projects, school, hospital, police, fire, emergency response, or other community support facility, or water, wastewater, telecommunications, electric, gas, or other utility infrastructure project that supports a military installation, are owned by a state or local government or not-for-profit member-owned utility service, and will enhance military family quality of life, resilience, military value at the supported military installation. Project has to be endorsed by local installation commanders representing the installation that's going to benefit from the proposed project. These projects need to be construction ready and is considered construction ready if the construction of the project may commence within 12 months of the award, and all necessary final design and planning, federal and state, local environmental planning, and local permitting actions have been substantially complete. Federal funds for this project may supplement but can't substitute for or otherwise supplant other available public funds that are available for the proposed project. And that includes funds from the Defense Access Roads Program or the U.S. Department of Transportation grants. As far as eligible costs go, they include but are not limited to project administration, inspection, construction, utilities, and contingency costs required to execute the project, as well as capital equipment affixed to real property with a depreciable life of not less than 7 years. And then really lastly, the timeline associated with this, complete proposals must be received by OEA by 26 June, which is a proposal deadline. Those proposals will be ranked by a review panel. SecDef will approve the final markings, and OEA will assign project managers and invite applications by 8 August of 20. And then lastly, I skipped over this. So as far as contribution, so entities must contribute 50% or more of the funding of the project. So that's what I have. The actual announcement and the details were sent as an attachment to this agenda. So much more detail in there, but I just wanted to give an overview. And then if there are any questions for me or anything I can do to assist, please let me know. Over.
JJ, thanks for that information in your presentation. Looking for, okay, so let me go to the public first. Based on these two funding grant opportunities, are there any comments from members of the public? Looking for Nicole Burgess, still with us. Okay, Nicole.
I was making comments after the rest of the, if I can wait to hear comments from the, or if you need my comments now, that's fine. I just, really want to speak, of course, on how bikes are really a part of resiliency. So when we look at our core values of these funding sources, quality of life and resilience, these active transportation projects. So if I'm just going to throw out one project, it would be the EAP project for the bicycle project. That's a Sandag EAP project for Pack Highway, as it kind of envisions all the types of visions for the mobility hub, the corridors, and active transportation for our military. So thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Burgess. Okay. Matt Scales.
Hi, thank you. I had a quick clarification question. In regards to the OEA pilot program, it was mentioned that 3 military installations locally had been identified for this, and I'm curious what are those 3 installations?
Steve Chung here. It's not the pilot program, but this is the initial military installation resilience program, and the 3 installations that were identified for consideration was Naval Base San Diego, Naval Base Point Loma, and Naval Base Coronado.
Okay, thank you. As a research scientist, I commute daily to Naval Base Point Loma, well, I guess during non-quarantine times. If you'd like to talk further about ideas for that, I'd be happy to follow up outside of this meeting.
I'm more than happy to. Thank you.
Other comments from the public right now? Okay, any comments, any other comments from members of the military working group?
I would like to state for the record, Chair, that we did not have any email comments on item 7.
Okay, thank you, Tessa. Thank you, clerk. Okay, so I would suggest if something strikes you after this meeting, a day or two now, that you reach out to either Steve Chung or April to help navigate if you're interested in pursuing any of these grant funding opportunities. April, is there anything else? Or Steve?
Nothing on my end, Chairman.
Nothing on my end either. I think that internal staff at SANDAG is going to reach out to our military counterparts if there are any other opportunities that we would like to be considered. And if after this meeting, any of the military working group members have any suggestions, they can reach out to me and we'll set up a meeting to have that discussion.
Thank you, April. And we look forward again to working closely with you over the next, hopefully, couple of years as the military working group proceeds on.
Thank you,
Okay,
Chair.
I'm on to item number 8, which is our next meeting. Right now, our next meeting is not scheduled until the 26th of October. However, if something pops up and we think we need to get us back together sooner, we will do so. So if you can tentatively schedule 9 a.m. on 26 October, that's when we're our next meeting. Before I get to the adjournment, are there any other comments from members of the working group to share information with your fellow members? Okay, hearing none, I much appreciate everybody's participation. Much appreciate the staff's effort to get me smart to work us through this so we could do this in cyberspace. Hopefully the next time we have a meeting, we can be more socially distant, but in the same room. With that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody. Be well.
Thank you.